In this video, I'm going to share with you guys why so many people fail in the driving test and how you can pass your driving test the first time. I use the same method to help my students pass their driving test easily. Here's an example of one of my students who passed his driving road test with a perfect score, no critical errors, no general errors. I'm Mandeep Burmi, the owner of Ace Driving School in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We help people pass their driving test easily. And today you are going to learn my secrets on how to pass your driving test. Keep watching. A lot of people fail their driving test. They can drive fine, but they still cannot pass their driving test. And unfortunately, most of the advice they get from their family members and friends does not work. You know the advice I'm talking about. Don't go over the speed limit. Always do shoulder check. Go in a proper lane. Sure, this advice can help a little bit, but it's not going to maximize your chances of passing your driving test. Why? Because it does not cover all the critical errors in the driving test. You fail your driving test if you get one or more than one critical error in the driving test. After working for many years as a driving instructor, I discovered an easier way to pass driving test. My students use the same method to pass their driving test the first time.
Hi, my name's Drew, and when I went for my driving test, I aced it the first time.
Wow, this has been a long journey. I took my test quite a few times and I couldn't pass, and I hired Ace and I passed. Thank you, Ace Driving School. You're awesome.
Hi, I'm Jackie, and I did my first road test with Aced it, and I passed.
And now it's time to share this method with you guys and show you exactly how to use it. There are two kinds of critical errors in the driving test. Number one, standard critical errors. Number two, situation-based critical errors. Most of the time, people fail their driving test on situation-based critical errors. If you understand the situation-based critical errors, you can pass your driving test easily. Trust me. Alright folks, in order to understand the situational critical errors, we will look at some different situations. I'm just going to take this intersection as an example. We will turn left at the traffic lights on this intersection about 4 or 5 times, and every single time the situation will be different. I will point out what are the critical errors in every single situation. So as I'm driving towards the intersection, I'm asking myself these two questions. Question number one, what are the critical errors here? Question number two, how do I pass my driving test here? Now, both questions are very important to ask yourself, because question number one, if you don't know the critical errors, that means you're gonna get one, okay? If you don't know what are the critical errors here, you're gonna do something silly and you're gonna get one critical error. The second question is, how do I pass my driving test here? It's just more like a engagement. It's more like it's gonna remind you that you need to stay focused on the road. You need to stay focused all the time. So back to question number one, what are the critical errors in this situation? Now what I see, we have a solid green light and there's no other car established in the intersection. So I am the first car here and we are turning left. If you are the first car, you are turning left, your light is green, you have to go in the intersection. If you don't go in the intersection, that's going to be a critical error in the driving test. So if I stop before the stop line here, that's going to be a critical error because I did not establish. Now the second critical error is if I stop in the middle of the intersection. Now as I'm driving towards the middle of the intersection, I am observing traffic, I'm checking traffic, I'm checking pedestrian and cyclist on the sidewalk here. Now I see a car coming, but looks like that car is too far from me, so that means I can complete my turn without stopping in the intersection. If I stop in the intersection when the traffic was too far, that's going to be a critical error because it creates interference with the traffic that's behind you. And then as I'm turning, I'm approaching this street here, then I ask myself, okay, what are the critical errors here? How do I pass my driving test here? Now the critical errors, we have actually 2 lanes here. There's no marking on the street, but it's a pretty wide street. That tells me we got 2 lanes. Instead of taking the first lane, if I go in the second lane, that's going to be a critical error. Okay, so now we are back onto that same intersection. Now this time, same thing, I'm going to ask myself, what are the critical errors here? How do I pass my driving test here? Looks like the light is green, same situation that we had last time. There's no other car in the intersection, so I'm the first one. So that means I don't stop behind the stop line, I have to go in the intersection. But this time, now the situation is a little bit different. Last time we had a traffic coming from this side, but the traffic was too far and we did not have anyone on the sidewalk here. But this time we got no traffic, but we do have a cyclist on the sidewalk here. So that means I have to stop in the intersection and let the cyclist go first. Now here's the second question that I'm going to ask myself. Where exactly do I stop in the intersection? Yes, we need to establish, but how far do we go in the intersection? If I go too far in the intersection, instead of stopping before the middle of the intersection, if I stop on the right side of the intersection here, that's also critical error in the driving test. So as I'm driving, I'm constantly asking myself, what are the critical errors here based on the situation, and how do I pass my driving test here? So here I'm going to stop, I'm slowing down, and now the cyclist is gone. That's when I complete my turn. Okay, we are going to turn left again on that same intersection. So far, as I'm approaching towards the intersection, I am checking the traffic light. So far the light is green. If it the light is red. If it stays red, that means I have to stop behind the stop line. But if it turns green, that means I have to establish. So now as soon as I get there, the light turns green. I'm going in the intersection. This time we have a totally different situation. I'm still the first car. There was no other car in front of me, but we do have oncoming traffic. So that means I have to stop before the middle of the intersection. If I don't stop for this oncoming traffic, that's going to be a critical error. And if I go too far in the intersection, let's say when I establish, if I go too far in the intersection, if I stop on the right side of the intersection here, that's also critical error in the driving test. So now I'm in the middle of the intersection. I'm observing my traffic light, I'm checking traffic. Before I go from here, I have to remind myself that I also need to check pedestrian cyclist to make sure the sidewalk is clear. So now looks like after this car here, that's when I go. And if I don't go after this car, that's still gonna be a critical error, because then it becomes hesitation. So now this car is gone, I'm proceeding. Now here's another situation. So I ask myself again, what are the critical errors here? How do I pass my driving test here? Now the situation is, we are turning left, but at the same time this white car is turning right. Now the question is, do we wait for this white car, or should we just go? Now we don't want to wait for this white car because we got the right of way. So this white car has a yield sign here. Okay, so that means they have to wait for us. If I stop for that white car, if I'm letting the white car go first, that's going to be a critical error in the driving test. So now we are going to look at another example. So we are on a different intersection, we are turning left. So this time the situation is totally different. So we have a red light and we are just waiting for the light to turn green. And I do have another car in front of me, and this car is also turning left. So that means I have to see what he will do when the light turns green. So here I ask myself, okay, what are the critical errors, and how do I pass my driving test here? So as he's driving in the intersection, I have to see if he's going to stop in the middle of the intersection or not. If he stop in the middle of the intersection, then I stay behind the stop line. If I follow that car, that's gonna be a critical error. Very important point. So let me say that again. If this red car if this red car stop in the middle of the intersection and I follow him, if I go behind that car when he stops in the intersection, that's an automatic fail. Basically what I need to do is, as I'm driving towards the intersection, I will be checking traffic on this side as well. If I see we don't have any traffic on this side, that means I know this red car is not going to stop in the intersection. Traffic, and one more thing, we are also checking pedestrian and cyclist on the sidewalk. So we do see a pedestrian here, but this guy is going the other way, so that means he's not going to interfere with us. So we just have to observe traffic. Right now there's one car, this golden car is already turning right. Looks like this black car, we just have to see which way he's going. At this point I see this black car is turning right. Looks like this green car is also pointing to the right side, so he's also going right. But if that white car is going straight, that means the red car will actually wait for the white car, and I have to stay behind the stop line, and that's why I'm increasing my distance here. I'm slowing down. I'm staying behind the stop line. If I start to follow this red car, that's gonna be a critical error. So you're always asking yourself these questions: what are the critical errors here? How do I pass my driving test? And based on your knowledge, based on your previous experience, you do your best to answer these questions. And when you do that, for every single situation, you are engaged with the process, and when you're engaged with the process, it's nearly impossible to fail your driving test. You will pass your driving test easily. You will also stay safe on the road. So let's see what happens in this situation. As you can see, I'm staying behind the stop line here. Looks like the white car is going straight. Now when the white car is gone, the intersection was totally empty after that. Light is still green. That's when I proceed. There's no pedestrian, cyclist on the sidewalk, and I come into the first lane. So as I'm turning, then I'm again asking myself questions. What are the critical errors? How do I pass my driving test? So when I complete my turn, the critical error will be if instead of coming into the first lane, if I go in the second lane. Alright, that's gonna be a critical error. So in order to pass my driving test, I will come in the first lane, unless this lane is blocked for some reason. Maybe there's construction going on, or any other reason. If the first lane is not available, then I can go in the second lane, because I don't really have any other option. But if the first lane is available, then I'm supposed to go in my first lane. So let's look at a different situation now. So this one is we are just going to exit this parking lot. So here I will ask myself, what are the critical errors here? How do I pass my driving test here? Now the critical errors are, let's say, by the rules, anytime before you exit a driveway, parking lot, or a back lane, you always have to make a full stop before the sidewalk or before you enter on the road. And then you make a full stop before the sidewalk. You check on the sidewalk to make sure there's no pedestrian, no cyclist, and if the sidewalk is clear, then you proceed. So in this situation, the critical error will be if I don't stop for this pedestrian. So I made a full stop, and then I checked on both sides. I saw this pedestrian was coming, so I stopped for him. Pedestrian is crossed, he's gone, and that's when I move forward, check traffic on the left. If it's clear, then I complete my turn. Now we are turning right here. Then I ask again, now this one is a yield, so I ask myself again, what are the critical errors in a yield, and how do I pass my driving test here? So again, based on the situation, there will be, few different situations. Just like the left turn at the traffic lights, we can have different situations when you're turning right in a yield. So right now, as I'm approaching, I have to remind myself that if I'm turning right, I have to stay closer to the right curb here. within 3 feet. If I'm going too far from the right curb, that's gonna be a deduction. And then I see a sidewalk coming up, then I check on the crosswalk here. If I don't see any pedestrian on the crosswalk, then I check traffic on the left side. If I see somebody coming, like if there is a traffic coming from the left side, then I wait for the traffic. But let's say if there's no pedestrian or cyclist, there's no traffic coming, and if I still stop, that's gonna be a critical error, because a yield sign means you just want to slow down, keep your car moving, check for pedestrian, cyclist, traffic, and if it's clear, then you don't stop. So here I'm slowing down, I'm checking everything, and it looks good, so I'm completing my turn. As you're turning, you're driving, you're asking yourself all these questions. What are the critical errors here? How do I pass my driving test here? So based on the different situations, so for example, let's say this school zone here, it says maximum 30, below 30 it says Monday to Friday, September to June, from 7 in the morning until 5:30 p.m. So now then I have to that's the only time when you drive at 30 kilometers. So if you're driving on weekends, or if you're driving in the month of July or August, or if you are driving in the evening time, then this 30 speed limit sign doesn't apply to you. In that situation, the speed limit on this street will be 50 kilometers, because in Manitoba, if you don't see any speed limit sign, that means it's 50 kilometers. So now we see railway tracks coming up. So again, I ask myself, what are the critical errors here? How do I pass my driving test here? So the rule for the railway crossing is I have to slow down, cover my brake, check on both sides, and I physically have to turn my head to make it obvious to my examiner that I'm checking on the railway tracks. If I don't move my head, my examiner won't be able to tell if I'm checking or not. So here we are going to turn right on this intersection. So same thing here, I asked myself, what are the critical errors here? How do I pass my driving test here? Now the critical errors will be if I don't wait for this pedestrian. Okay, that's gonna be a critical error, because she's already on the crosswalk. Even like if you see a pedestrian that's already close to the crosswalk, so maybe there's another pedestrian here who want to cross this way, right? So you have to wait for pedestrians. They always cut the right of way. Now the next critical error is what this car is actually doing. So this guy, this yellow sign means it's a merge, so this guy actually stopped in the merge lane, so he's defeating the purpose of the merge lane. He's treating that pretty much as a stop sign or as a yield. So this diamond shape yellow color sign means it's a merge, and merge means you're getting a speed up lane. So they're giving you a another lane, you go in your lane, you speed up, and then you change your lane. So yeah, so in this situation, what this guy did, I don't want to do that, because if I stop there like this guy, that's going to be a critical error. So now I see a merge lane sign, that means I go in the merge lane without stopping there, and then I switch my lanes. So I would put the signal on, shoulder check, and when it's safe to do so, then I would move over to the left side.
See how easy it's to drive when you already know everything? Now if you do this for every single thing, left turns, right turns, lane change, roundabout, one-way streets, parking lot, doesn't matter, everything, I promise you're gonna pass your driving test like this. Easy pass, okay? Now the big question is, how would you know all the critical errors before you even go for your driving test? Well, you have two options. Option number one is you can practice and practice for hours and hours, go through almost all the possible different situations and understand what you should be doing and what you should not be doing. You can take driving lessons to do this, but let's be honest here. Most people, they don't have time, they got no money for unlimited lessons. So here's the second option for you guys. You can simply buy this online training program that I put together. In this online training program, I talk about the situation-based critical errors, standard critical errors, general errors in detail. And I will explain almost all the critical errors for left turns, right turns, lane change, roundabout, one-way streets, merging, yielding, parking lots. So pretty much everything that's required to successfully pass your driving test. So it doesn't matter where you take your driving test, you will already know almost all the standard critical errors and situation-based critical errors before you go for your driving test. And you will get hours and hours of excellent training in a very structured way to help you pass your driving test. And you only pay $99 for it. So that's it, just $99 and you will get to know almost all the critical errors before you go for your driving test. Guys, that's gonna maximize your chances of passing your driving test the first time. Now, when you know everything, even after getting your license, all the information, it's gonna stay with you. So when you drive with your friends, your family members, you will stay safe on the road. So buy the online training program right now and ace your driving test the very first time. Thank you very much and I will see you guys again.